Hi there. If you are looking for the StoryHive content creator chat, you're in the right place. We're just waiting for folks to join us. So while we're waiting for people in the YouTube, you please use our YouTube chat to tell us, why don't we answer a question? Tell us about your favorite documentary or independent film that you've recently seen and has had an impact on you. So we'll just give it another minute or so here and we'll get started. Okay, well, why don't we get started? Hi there, and welcome to the Content Creator Chat, the next 10 years celebrating 10 years of TELUS STORYHIVE. I would like to acknowledge that I'm calling in from the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations, where I live and have the opportunity to live and work. TELUS's work spans across many Indigenous territories and treaty areas, and they recognize and honor the land as an act of reconciliation and gratitude. For those attending the session from elsewhere, I also want to acknowledge the Indigenous territories and lands on which you are living and working. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you need to leave the session early or would like to watch on a later date, a recording will be available directly afterwards on StoryHive's YouTube page. So please give us a follow on the socials if you aren't already. For all of the TELUS Optic TV subscribers, the presentation will be available on demand on Channel 9 starting tomorrow. Today, we also have Liz joining us, our ASL interpreter. Thank you, Liz. And also Larissa will be also joining us momentarily. So, wow, it's been a decade since TELUS StoryHive launched and has given communities across BC and Alberta an opportunity to share their stories on the Canadian broadcasting system. Through innovative programs, they provide production funding, training, mentorship, and distribution on TELUS Optic TV and online platforms. StoryHive continues to focus on their ongoing mission to support underrepresented communities, helping empower the next generation of content creators and storytellers. So to kick things off, let's watch the 10-year anniversary celebratory digital spot.
Ten years ago, StoryHive was created. My story began when I was a very young girl.
My story began on TikTok
with our love of local storytelling.
When a good friend of ours told us about a program that was running,
and then I found StoryHive.
In 10 years, StoryHive's programming has expanded from one offering to 5.
We are proud to help and empower the next generation of content creators and storytellers.
Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations again to TELUS STORYHIVE. So, well, I'll just kick things off by telling you who I am and why I'm here. My name is Prem Gill, and I'm currently the CEO of Creative BC. We're an independent nonprofit agency supported by the province of BC, supporting the success of British Columbia's creative industries. And we deliver a wide range of programs and services that expand BC's creative economy to reach both its economic, social, environmental, and creative potential at home and globally. It's through Creative BC's vast funding programs that we partner with organizations and funding bodies across Canada to catalyze the support of the creation of IP by BC creators. As a partner of StoryHive, I'm pleased to congratulate all of you on 10 years. We're proud to support our annual partnership by delivering grant top-ups to local creators here in BC. I'm also excited to be celebrating with you as a friend of StoryHive. Before my role here at Creative BC, I spent 8 years with TELUS, and most recently, my last role there was as Director of Production Original Programming, where we developed and launched StoryHive. Really very proud of all the work that everybody's done here, as well as TELUS Optic TV community channel. So it's really been amazing. I'm really proud to watch the program as it's flourished and supported so many people across BC and Alberta, elevated the profile of local content creation, and continues to uplift the voices of diverse creators across British Columbia. So we're going to get the conversation started. So we're going to do this in 3 segments today. I'm going to meet 6 teams, 6 creators, and our first group are Leslie Bangama, Haley Gray couldn't be here with us today. So hello, Haley. Sorry you couldn't be here. And Shaylin Johnson. So welcome, Leslie and Shaylin. Give us a wave. So let's get started. So tell us, what are your thoughts and commentary on the current state of short film and documentary creation and the opportunities that you're most excited about? Leslie, why don't we start with you?
I'm Leslie, and I reside in Red Deer, Alberta. And to answer your question, I feel that without StoryHive, there wouldn't be much representation in Western Alberta. I think there is funding for indie short films, but a lot of that funding is usually done out east. So StoryHive has been really great to help elevate creators on the Western side of Canada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really great to see so many voices and such a diversity of perspectives. I should also note, sorry, Michelle, I didn't recognize that you will also be in this session, so please turn your camera and mic on as well. Shaylin, how has it been for you in terms of short film and documentary creation from where you sit?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I feel like there's been a new wave of Indigenous cinema in both narrative and documentary over the last few years, and a lot of those filmmakers are getting their start through programs like StoryHive. And we're seeing so many unique voices and stories being told. I feel like my to be watched list is just growing exponentially, and it's going to keep growing more as we continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michelle, welcome. And what about you? What have you been thinking about in terms of short form and documentary creation these days?
As an Indigenous woman, it's super exciting because I see the Indigenous film community growing and growing every day, and being able to be a part of the program and doing this film, I've been able to meet so many like-minded people. So it's thrilling and energizing and exciting. So yeah, I'm really excited where things are going in Indigenous film. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just so much more to explore, which if you haven't and you're tuning into this, explore not, the projects that all of these folks are working on, but so much more. It really has been, the essence of StoryHive at the beginning, the idea was to build communities and build communities of creators who would support each other's projects. So it's really great to hear that 10 years in, these experiences are building on that. Leslie, your project, Amelie's Second Chance, garnered a lot of national attention, including from, local Canadian celebrities like Jillian Harris. But what's your advice to newly funded content creators like yourself to make the most of their StoryHive experience?
And thank you. My advice to newly funded content creators for StoryHive would be make all the mistakes. The StoryHive program was created with the mentorship so that you can make those mistakes and learn. When I look back on my experience with StoryHive thus far, it was in those mistakes that I really understood what goes into making a documentary, because I went in with zero experience. So I just make the most of the mentorship because they're really there to help you, and the program managers are really knowledgeable. So that would be my advice.
So Leslie, you weren't a filmmaker or in this area at all before you applied for a StoryHive grant?
I was not a filmmaker. So I am a mother to 3 children, live in suburban Red Deer, okay? Mm-hmm. And something really tragic happened to my daughter. And I started raising awareness about this, and someone guided me to StoryHive and said, you should apply for this. And imposter syndrome, I said, how? I've never made a film before. I wouldn't even know where to start, legally, technically, all the things. And they were like, well, just apply. So I applied. I thought my answers were horrible, but I just answered them the best way that I could. And then I just waited, and then I ended up getting funded. And when I look at my project from where I started, I'm like, wow, how did this even come together? Because I had no idea.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. It is, you had a story to tell, and that's the first step, the first place to start from. So congratulations on, being brave and going for it, because clearly it's had an impact. So Shaylin, you've worked on both the first and second editions of Indigenous STORYHIVE. Your first project, The Healing Dance, was animation with themes grounded in reality. What about the stories and perspectives are you most looking forward to in amplifying your next project as you enter this next edition of STORYHIVE?
Yeah, so The Healing Dance was a story that was grounded in culture, and it delved into dance. And I sort of feel that like a lot of my work as a filmmaker and as a writer and storyteller is to share what I've learned about my own culture, about my family. And so I am continuing that with the next film that I'm doing. This one is going to be one that delves into language. Sort of chronicling my journey to learn my traditional language, Ojibwe, and I'm excited that STORYHIVE's giving me the platform to do that. It's going to be like a pretty big difference going from animation on my first project into this one's going to be like a live action narrative. But I'm really glad that it's STORYHIVE that I'm doing this through, because of all of the community building that it provides and the mentorship that comes along with it. So I'm nervous, but it's like a nervous, excited because of all the support I'm being given.
So have you worked in both live action and animation before this?
No. So,
okay.
I mean, and in terms of animation, no. Animation, I thought it would be easier to do my film as an animation instead of doing it as live action. And I mean, in some ways it was, but in some ways it also wasn't, which was a learning experience. But we had a great time. And I think that, our final product, the film, turned out really great. And I had a really fun experience with it. And now I get to try, this is going to be my first time directing a live action narrative. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, you should be. That's excellent. And Michelle, you came through the Empowered Filmmaker program. So how did that set you up for success? And also tell us about, were you also already wanting to make films before you heard of STORYHIVE and joined the program?
Okay, great. First, I wanted to say how amazing the Empowered Filmmaker program is. I can't say enough good things about Farhan and his crew. I took the program a few times because there's so much to learn. And before I was in the program, I was basically self-taught using YouTube and but was able to make films. But being able to be in the program with Farhan and his crew, I was able to create polished products, and I'm still learning. And I too have a bit of imposter syndrome, but after being in the program, Farhan really tells you you're a filmmaker, own it, and that's what I've done, and then gone on to do more exciting things. So,
and you the skills you learned there, they supported you. You then applied for the Indigenous Storyteller Edition.
Yes. And so, being able to be in the Empowered Filmmaker course has taught me to go right from an idea, the messaging, the story, and the filming, the editing is where I got a lot of help from Farhan in the editing piece, and he's absolutely amazing. He still mentors me now, and I've been out of the program for a while, but he's consistently mentors me with the Indigenous Storyteller Edition. And it's just exciting because I can bring the stories from our Indigenous communities forward, because for a long time, mainstream media capitalized on how stories were told, how our stories were told. So STORYHIVE and the Indigenous Storyteller Edition provides the space. It's created the space for us to tell our stories on mainstream media, how we want to tell them. And it's so important. And I'm just super excited about the film coming out and a little bit nervous. I heard Leslie say some things about imposter syndrome and being nervous, but at the same time, it's exciting. It's a thrilling and exciting nervousness. And I'm just so excited. And thank you for having me here today.
And, and I totally get it, right? That this idea of imposter syndrome, being nervous, but you're here, you all did it. And that's, because you know what you're doing and you're learning and you're open to that learning. So I think, don't be shy, celebrate your successes and your projects. You've all talked about the mentoring element. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, especially, Leslie, you were so green, you never thought that this was going to be a career path for you. You wanted to get a very specific message about a personal story out there. So how did that telling your personal story in jointly with the mentorship really help you do that?
So that helped me because backstory, my whole life, I've always been told I was a storyteller. I love sharing stories. I genuinely believe that there's more that connects us than separates us. And applying, like, to speak to Michelle's words, applying to the Black Creators Edition, I was able to tell a story that, yes, although what happened to my daughter, we are a Black family, but through our story, what happened to her could happen to anyone. It crosses all borders. So for me, what StoryHive and the mentorship really helped me unpack was how to storytell in a way that brings your audience in, brings empathy for the characters involved, and then motivated me to apply for even more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, now I still can't believe that I'm doing this, truthfully, because I think, especially as a mom to 3 children, you kind of think, hey, I'm a mom. I'm just, going to do mom things. And it's with the mentorship, especially that I actually was partnered with another mentor who's also a parent, although her children are a bit older. It's been really neat for my children to even see me do what I'm doing and have that passion unleashed, at 34. So StoryHive, I think what I even want to highlight right now, like, there's no ageism in StoryHive either, right? So anybody watching this who thinks like, oh, well, I'm already into whatever, it's for you. It really is for you. There is no ageism. It's for everyone, for all walks of life.
And I guess the other element to this is, it may be that you just want to tell this one story that, even if this isn't a career path for you, it's important that for you, I'm getting the sense that it's like this. And I encourage everybody to watch the piece to really, there's so much in this story to learn about you and your family and the impact that you've had on others in your community by telling the story. But what, that element of it, I think, is really unique and interesting, part of what StoryHive has encouraged in communities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Shaylin, you participated in the National Screen Institute's, the NSI, in their mentorship program. So what was that experience like, and how did that support your project?
So I think just the mentorship in general through StoryHive has been absolutely fabulous. The mentors that I've been paired up with, I feel like the NSI really takes your project into consideration and who you are as a filmmaker, and pairs you up with someone who is going to really be able to connect with you and support you through your project. When I was doing the healing dance, I was paired up with Loretta Todd, who is a fantastic filmmaker based here in BC. And luckily we had worked together previously, but she had so many fantastic tips in terms of animators, because it was my first foray into the area, and she had some experience. So she was really great for connections for people that I could reach out to, and suggestions on how I might move forward with the project. And then this time around, I was paired up with Jules Kustachin, who just finished wrapping her second feature. And and she's been so amazing. She invited me to her set to come watch her work. It's my first time directing, so I was able to just like follow her around on set, and she would, explain everything that she was doing and why she was doing it. And so to just have that aspect of support while you're in the process of creating your own project has just been like fantastic. And I feel so much more confident going into filming my own project. So thank you to the NSI and StoryHive for that additional support.
Was it what you expected in terms of mentorship? And it sounds like went beyond what maybe your expectations were.
Yeah, above and beyond for sure. Sometimes there's times when you can get paired up with a mentor and they just sort of, have one coffee with you and give you a little bit of advice and then their job is done. But I feel like I was paired up with mentors who I could reach out to whenever I had questions. And I feel like that's going to continue long past these projects as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's fantastic. And Michelle, you talked about Farhan and the Empowered Filmmaker Program. I don't know if everybody who would be watching this actually knows who Farhan is and what the role is within the StoryHive team. Would you mind describing that? Because it was a very unique edition of StoryHive that you were received your first grant from.
Right. So the Empowered Filmmaker, it used to be called the Indigenous Empowered Filmmaker class. So Farhan is the founder and the trainer, and he's absolutely amazing. So it's a week-long program that takes anybody who's interested in making a film. You don't have to have any experience at all. You don't even have to know how to turn on a camera. And in 5 days, you learn how to make a film from start to finish. So he has, I think it's going into its 6th year now. And I think they have made, I'm not even sure how many films, many films. I know there's at least 25 participants in each class. And I think he does 4 each summer. So I've taken it a few times and him and his team are absolutely amazing. He has gone to Indigenous communities throughout BC and this year, Alberta. They've expanded to Alberta. And you can find the films on YouTube under Empowered Filmmaker. And it has really set me up for success because I have always been a storyteller too. That's what I've been told too. And I've always liked to write. I've written plays and dabbled in lots of different things, but I've always envisioned being a filmmaker and, bringing to film festivals and really important issues that Indigenous people are facing and have faced. And it has really set me up to tell the story that started back in my undergrad Bachelor of Social Work in 2011, and now it's grown into this amazing project. Yes.
Wow, this keeps going and going. I don't know, all of you, you're juggling so many different things, but that is the life of creators, I think, where you're not just focused in one area, but doing many things. Leslie, I'm curious for you, when you brought such a personal story forward, what was, when you first saw it screened, or what was that like when people, your family and community first saw it? What kind of reaction did you get from people?
It was a lot of tears. So even to highlight the mentorship, even though I knew I had a powerful story to tell, it was very traumatic reliving it. And having a mentor there who would lovingly call me out that I was holding back, because I was something I really needed. Because once the final project was screened, we had a screening in Red Deer. I remember the first words after my mom watched it, she called me and she said, "You didn't tell us all of this." Mm. And I realized it was actually quite therapeutic in the end. While I was working on it, I absolutely did not think that. But to see the finished project and to see the response from people, because we did a documentary and it was a factual event. It was a lot of, we didn't know.
And it happened to you.
It happened to me. And even the people who were around when it had happened, they didn't realize the magnitude of the trauma my daughter had experienced and what we as a family had experienced collectively. So that was mainly the response, and still is the response.
Yeah. And Shaylin and Michelle, same question for you. The first time, you were able to show people your final work, whether it was at a screening or on TELUS Optic or the YouTube channel, what did that feel like, and how did your communities respond to you? Shaylin, why don't we start with you?
Well, when I was doing my the first edition back in 2018, 2019, there was a marketing mentorship, and just we learned about all these different ways to like help promote your film once it came out, and made like a whole plan for how everything was going to be shared once it came out. And just being able to set that off when the film came out, I started to see pockets of different people watching the film and tweeting about it. And I remember my community, Saugeen First Nation, like we have this community group on Facebook, and they were sharing the project there, and just hearing like from all of these people in my community who I knew and who I didn't know, who were just so proud of seeing, someone from their community who had made a film, but to also see a story that represented themselves and our culture. I think that's the memory that I think of the most when I think of that first project premiering.
Yeah, it'll stick with you too for a long time, I think, that memory. And Michelle, what about you?
Well, I haven't finished my project. I'm still in the middle of it, but I have received so much support from my communities, many communities, and they're just really, like Shaylin said, really thrilled. And yeah, there's definitely a sense of pride to see representation from the Syilx and Secwepemc, Okanagan, and Shuswap nations here in the interior of what is known as BC and Kamloops. But yeah, I've gotten so much support from communities, and everybody's awaiting this project, which puts a lot of pressure, but it's a really important message. And I'm super excited for my friends and family and community, and to share it on TELUS Optic next year.
What's been the most unexpected thing that's happened, I guess, positive or negative, through this experience in creating this project, as you're in the middle of it still, Michelle?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I guess, what's been, I guess, a surprise as you've been in the process of creating your project that you didn't expect?
I guess, well, I'm the type of person who just throws myself into things, and I'm like, that sounds like a good idea, I'm going to do it. And then I get there and I'm like, whoa, this is a lot of work. This is a lot more than I expected. But that's where the mentorship and the support from TELUS STORYHIVE and NSI really comes in. Because they really do help guide you and, create space and direct you. And so all those feelings are, they kind of just disappear, and it turns back into excitement. So, and what was the other part you said, the one that surprised you?
Yeah, I guess anything, in the actual creative process that you didn't anticipate.
Yeah, I guess just how much work it really is, but it's all definitely worth it. And, going through it once there's a lot of new pieces to it. But again, the support really helps. And then knowing that I have that in my, my toolbox, the next one I do, I've already have like so many projects on the go besides my main Indigenous Storyteller edition. So it's just a gift that keeps giving.
Yeah, that's great. And Shaylin, you're going to move, you've worked in animation, now you're moving to live action. You had said earlier that, you thought animation might be easier, but I think you probably learned many different things in that process. Again, what was, the big light bulb that went off for you when you're in the middle of the animation process that you're like, I never thought of that?
Honestly, I think it was like the cost of doing animation is is really high. But I also learned that there's ways that you can make it work, depending on what your budget is. And I think being able to work with people who have experience in the area that can say, oh, okay, this is our budget. Well, here's some ideas for what we can do so that we can make it fit to that. So we ended up doing the healing dance as more of like a motion comic, which is just where you have one image and then something in the image, only one thing in the image moves, instead of having a whole bunch of, pieces moving throughout the animation. So the cost was probably the biggest surprise to me, but I was also happy to find out that we were able to make it work.
Yeah, excellent. We've just got a couple minutes left here, but Leslie, you have another project that you've just been alerted to that will be coming through StoryHive. Do you want to share that?
Yes. So another positive about StoryHive is it's not one and done if you don't want it to be. So I love the process of doing my first documentary. So I pitched to the anniversary edition, and I pitched my story. It's called Pioneers. And essentially, as I reside in Red Deer, it's quite a homogeneous population. And I love history. I've always loved history. And one thing I've noticed in any different municipality within Canada is that the lens is always on the, for lack of a better term, colonial settlers, but never, like, as a child of first generation of Congolese immigrants who came to Canada, there's always like a founding family that moves to one location first and then lets other people know, hey, this is where we live. You should consider making this a home. And their stories are never told. So my experience is from a Congolese family lens, but there's so much diversity in Red Deer, contrary to what people may think. And my kids being born and raised there, they get a lot of like jabs about it. And I think that's what ignited this fire in me to say, actually, Red Deer is quite diverse. And I want to showcase that, like, because I have connected with so many different families from Vietnam, Colombia, Cuba, like just all in this small city in central Alberta. So I'm really excited to get started on that. Nervous,
Yeah.
But really excited to share the story.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to more Red Deer stories. So thank you. Thank you, Leslie, Shaylin, and Michelle. We're going to say goodbye to you for a few more minutes, and we'll come back shortly at the end. But thank you for sharing your experiences. Next up is our folks from the Voices group. So joining us will be Allison Leet and Mitch George. Here they are. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. Nice to see you both. I hope you enjoyed that last conversation. Certainly learning a lot through these chats. I'm sure you could relate to a lot of those experiences.
Yes.
So why don't we start with a question for both of you? Your experience and your thoughts on episodic and web series. They've gone through a bit of an evolution as platforms change, as audience habits change, but would love to hear what you're most excited about in this world of web series. Mitch, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, for sure. First things first, thanks for having me. And happy birthday, StoryHive.
Yes.
Yeah, with web series, I love the freedom that web series offer. It gives creators the flexibility to explore like niche or unconventional topics. It allows for the emergence of diverse voices, no pun intended, that may not have found a platform otherwise. And StoryHive's Voices also provides an amazing potential for collaboration with other web content or other voices projects. With the Film Labs, every episode we featured someone that was had a different hand in the film world. And as creators, we're always looking to team up with like-minded individuals from different backgrounds. And yeah.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to have several more questions for you as follow-up, but I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Allison, so what about for you? What are you thinking about in terms of the state of web series these days?
In terms of web series and content just on the web in general, what makes me really excited is how accessible it's coming. I know when I was younger, the world of film and creating something seemed very far away, didn't seem like something that I could actually do. But now with cell phones, anyone can make a series, anybody can tell a story, anyone can express themselves in that way. And I think that's really, really exciting, especially for our youth who are kind of growing up and feeling empowered that they can tell their stories and that they can get started today. You don't have to wait. You don't have to have fancy equipment. You don't need to have all of these things. You can start where you are right now. And that makes me very, very excited.
Mm-hmm. And what about knowing that you have a platform like StoryHive for distribution kind of built into this program? Does that make a difference?
Oh, 100%. Throughout the journey, they're kind of there to guide you. Hey, we can post this on social media, or they tag you and share your things and kind of give you a bigger audience in their world. But also when we first started this Voices 2.0, you kind of get a very brief meeting of the other content creators in your group. And I'm located on Vancouver Island. And so all the creators who are located here on the island kind of got together. We created a little chat group, followed each other's platforms, followed each other's stories, are liking, are commenting on each other's things. So not only is the StoryHive audience there, but getting to connect with creators in your circle that you otherwise wouldn't have met has been really cool.
Yeah, that's a big part of, I think, again, the origin of StoryHive was to really build communities of creators who support each other's projects. So when you need support on something, even if you're not working on something directly, that people know they have access to folks at least to ask questions and connect with. Okay, so I want to hear more about the Voices. So Voices 2.0. Mitch, can you describe it quickly, what it is?
I think so. Are you asking about my project or just the?
Well, I want to hear about your project, but just for folks who don't know what Voices Edition means.
Yeah, so Voices is where you're creating like episodic web series content. And I think you're creating up to 10 episodes that could be informative. It could be how-tos, or I think it could be just like day in the life.
Right. And your project was called the Film Lab. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the Film Labs was a how-to series. It was 10 episodes, and it was Bill Nye the Science Guy meets Inspector Gadget. I shot it with my 12-year-old niece, and we just covered topics on how to create content, how to make movies, how to shoot on a camera, and then introduced the audience to a ton of folks that were involved in the industry here in Alberta.
That's really great. It's almost like this is a starter episodic series for all kinds of new filmmakers and people creators entering the StoryHive universe.
Yeah. Our intention was to remove the barriers for the younger audience, those who think I'll never be able to make a movie. We really broke it down and showed them this is not impossible to do. And remove just barriers on the process and that they can do it too.
So through that process, as I think there's a Voices 3.0 that will be announced later this summer, what's your biggest takeaway that you would offer to people getting funded through this next Voices 3.0 edition?
Embrace collaboration, collaborate with others. I like to think of the word fail as first attempt in learning. So be okay with a fail-safe environment, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, reflect on everything, and use the training resources that StoryHive has to offer because they're incredible. We leaned on StoryHive quite a bit. And I would say document the process because you're going to want to look back maybe mostly for me because it was me and my niece, and that was time we spent together. But you're going to meet new people, you're going to meet new friends, and you're going to have a product at the end. But document the process for yourself, and so you have something to look back on.
Excellent advice. Allison, you've been nodding as Mitch has been sharing his thoughts. So first, tell us about your project Creating Community.
Of course, totally agree with a lot of what Mitch said. And I think all the creators are kind of on the same page in that regard. Creating Community is a 10-part documentary series about the importance of community theater and the safe space that it creates for people who choose to partake in it. So we followed the cast and crew of a local theater company here. We followed them for 3 months as they went through the rehearsal process, as they went and tried on their costumes, all the way up until opening night and closing night. And the story really kind of leans on how everyone kind of found this space and discovered who they are, or built their own confidence, or found their life partner, or found a passion or a career change, or just kind of finding a group that they can count on and depend on. So my story is very much about the community within the community.
So that sounds very cool as a project, and really probably made you probably learned things about people you thought you knew a lot about going into it. So you yourself were an actor, or still are an actor, and you went behind the camera on this. What made you want to produce your own thing?
Yes. So I am an actor, and I kind of got my started here in the community that I told my documentary about. So I got started doing community theater here in the Comox Valley, and it definitely helped to shape me as a person. So that's kind of a full circle moment, getting to come back to that. And over, the past 10 years, I've gone to school, I've done workshops as actors. And the one thing everybody tells you is don't be afraid to create your own content. And I'm an acting teacher. I own a studio, and I always tell my students, believe in yourself. You can do it. Make your own content, write something, create a web series. And it was just kind of finally time for me to take my own advice. And I'm very, very lucky that there's a strong film community here in the Comox Valley. And I had lots of community members mentor me and support me and encourage me to do that. And mirroring the first session of imposter syndrome, I think it's always there as artists. And so just having people there to encourage you and support you, and setting a good example. If I'm going to say this to my students, I need to be able to do it myself. And so I took the leap.
Yeah, well, congratulations on doing that. So Mitch, you mentioned your niece was part of your project. So what was it like? How did that happen? Like, was she eager to do it? Did you have to convince her? Were her parents supportive? What's it like working with a young actor or a young performer?
Yeah, there was no convincing. She was ready to do it. And actually, to speak on what Allison was saying, I'm not an actor. And I did star in this with her. So that was a huge learning curve for me. And I actually relied heavily on her, who has very limited experience, but it was how we fed off each other and the fun we had that made the whole experience easier and well worth it. And yeah, her parents, my brother is a huge advocate to get her into film and TV and do what she loves. And that makes me very happy because it's a passion of mine. And I'm a huge advocate for education and digital citizenship. And I think it's a great way for her to navigate this media landscape, this film landscape responsibly by doing it with someone who has the experience and someone that she trusts.
So do you have advice for folks who might be looking to work with young people or young performers, whether they're actors or hosts or in any capacity within a StoryHive project?
Yeah, I think it's important to promote a balanced approach to content creation. So when Anna and I work together, I encourage that we got to take breaks. We got to take selfies. We got to prioritize, our self-care. We had to make it about the experience rather than the work. and that's what's very important when you're working with young kids in film, to bring them in and put them to work is not the play. I think it's providing that experience and making a fun opportunity and engage them with that community. I think as well, we do need community outside of shooting projects. I think it's important that we have festivals and programs for kids. And that's where the Film Labs, it's now a program in Calgary to teach youth hands-on other than just video. And I'm a big advocate for that, to just provide that space.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what kind of feedback have you had on your series from folks who are using the tools that you're teaching them about?
Well, the program was huge. We had lots of folks checking out the Film Labs when it came out. It was in middle schools. It was in 2 middle schools here in Airdrie, used in the film studies class. And then when we started the program, youth were coming in and just blowing me away with what they were creating, and that sense of belonging that they had when they were there.
Yeah, that's so great that the schools are actually using the tool. That's fantastic. And because of this program, you're able to create them. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So Allison, when the theater performers actually saw the documentary, I'm so curious how they felt about your telling their story and what it looked like ultimately on a screen.
Yes. So our documentary hasn't fully come out yet. It's going to be coming out later this summer. But when a show wraps, when a theater show is over, you have closing night, and then you have a cast and crew party, where the cast and crew come together and celebrate the accomplishments of a wonderful run. And so we kind of did a mad dash scramble. And at the cast party, we got to show them I don't think it was the final cut. I think it was, the cut before the final cut. And we got to show it at the cast party to them. And these are actors and performers and crew members who have never seen themselves on camera before, have only ever performed live. And they just sat there and I was like, oh no, because it can be hard to watch yourself. And I didn't want them to feel that. Instead, I wanted that excitement. And they all just watched it. And it was a room full of tears at the end. This documentary is truly what I'm viewing it as is a gift to the community, to the theater community. We interviewed a lot of longstanding community members who aren't going to be here forever. And we jam-packed a bunch of history and love notes to our community. And so for them getting to watch this and to experience this together was very, very cool. And later this summer, or in the fall, we're going to do a viewing party for the entire community so that all community theater members and community members, even if they weren't involved in it, will get to come see it. And then, we'll gift it to them and it'll be part of their legacy.
That's fantastic. And I don't think people really realize how much, often community theater are people who have other day jobs, like they're not professionals necessarily, that this is part of their things they do in their spare time. So for that community of people for you to be able to tell that story must be hugely rewarding.
Very rewarding. This community means so much to me, and I have first-handedly watched the lives that it has changed for the better, watching people deal with things at home or insecurities, anxieties, overcoming shyness, gaining confidence, finding friends, finding where you belong is so important. And that's exactly what the documentary is about. In episode 1, we share, hey, these members work full time. They have jobs, they go to school, they have kids, they have houses, they have dogs, yet they come together 10 hours a week for 3 or 4 months to be able to put on a show and gift it to the community.
Wow. Just have a few minutes left here, but you've both talked a lot about belonging and community. And was that an unexpected outcome from this and to the level that happened for you, Allison, with this project and for others who were involved in it?
Yes, I knew in my heart of hearts, I know this community, and I knew there would be support, and I knew there would be people who were interested to get involved, but I just didn't imagine it on the scale that it happened, which is crazy. I think I had probably 150 people appear on camera during my documentary in some capacity. I'm in the Comox Valley. I had people reaching out with newspaper articles and history and photographs from all over the island, some people in Vancouver, contacting people who did community theater 10 years ago who now live in Toronto. So it was truly a labor of love of the entire community coming back together. And I think it was a great nostalgic piece getting to, reach out to people. Hey, remember when you did this show? Do you have any photos? And a lot of people just got to kind of relive that. They've gotten married, they've moved away, they're lawyers and doing all these fun things, and to get to bring them back to where they started was very cool.
What a gift to the community there. Congratulations. And Mitch, I'm sure you were relating to a lot of what Allison was speaking to in your community. I think you said you're in Airdrie. What was that like to get people involved and then using the tools?
Yeah, I think it's hard to do anything without community. I think of film crews, there's a sense of community there. Anytime we do a project, I rely so heavily on my community, and they never really seem to disappoint. The community members in Airdrie are always eager and ready to support a lot of the projects that we're doing. And yeah, I love it. And not only that, the StoryHive community, knowing that if I do hit a barrier somewhere, that I can fall back on StoryHive. And with that said too, I know we have a handful of folks joining us today that are interested in joining StoryHive. I'm more than happy for anyone to reach out who is joining and be part of your community if you're looking for support or if you need some guidance. Just from my experiences as going through StoryHive before, my inbox is always open to help because that's what I've received.
That's really nice, Mitch. I'm sure there will be people taking you up on that offer.
Yeah.
I think particularly for you both, you're in smaller communities where people may not even know that there is already a vibrant community of people who are involved in this type of creative endeavors. So that's fantastic. So we're going to pivot. So that was an excellent note, Mitch, to wrap on, because we're going to move to the summer crew, which is our next segment here. And we're going to come back with Mitch and Allison shortly. So now I'd like to welcome Keel and Kamiko. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. There's Keel. Hello.
Hello.
Wonderful to see you both. Thank you for hanging in there and listening to the other conversations. I'm sure it was triggering a lot of ideas for you as well. We're going to learn a little bit about the summer crew and what that is and your involvement in it. But I'd first like to get thoughts from both of you on what you're thinking about these days in terms of hyperlocal community content and the opportunities around it in this world of so much, platforms that bring us so much content on a global scale, but there's still a place for hyper local. Kamiko, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think when a lot of people think of hyperlocal content and the type of work that the summer crew is doing, you tend to think of the news, right? So your morning news, your evening news, and the kind of stories that they're showing in their community coverage. And so one of the really great things about the program that we got to do is that we got to do the same type of thing where we went and we're super hyper local. We only talked to local businesses, local artists, local creators. And I think when you look at the traditional news landscape, the broadcasters tend to have certain narratives that they're more comfortable portraying and certain people that they're more comfortable talking to. And I think the really cool thing about hyperlocal content now is that you're able to explore people who don't normally get to have that coverage. You get to tell stories of people who wouldn't be considered traditionally newsworthy. So being able to talk to people of color, queer people, just people who are marginalized in general, I think has really been awesome with hyperlocal content. And especially with live streaming now, you get to see just so many more faces than you would have been been able to see before and more stories told.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Keel, can you give us the quick overview of Summer Crew and also your thoughts on this concept of hyperlocal?
We were responsible for 2 hours of footage a week, all of which had to be live streamed, which we did through a platform called VidFlex. And then that at the end of each week is then edited by us, just kind of compiled together, bumpers added, pretty minimal editing. And then that is then uploaded to TELUS Optic. I assume after approval is made. But yeah, it was mostly in camera. The idea wasn't to like have a bunch of B-roll and have to edit a whole bunch of stuff. It was mostly like capture it in the moment, and then roll with whatever happened. And sometimes there would be like a logo in the shot that you didn't realize, or sometimes an interviewee might drop a couple of words you can't hear. So like there was minimal editing. But I guess as far as like hyper local content goes, I think it's great. I think it's filling kind of a void right now. I feel like a lot of our news right now is just so bombastic and comes at you so like just with such force and immediacy that it's nice to have stories that are not only local but also maybe there's a little bit more consideration put into it, as instead of like how fast can we get this out, we need to be covering a 24-hour news cycle. It's like Kimiko said, we get to really pick who we talk to and highlight groups of people that maybe don't always get the airtime.
And question for both of you, and Kimiko, maybe we'll come back to you. Did you have any experience in live before doing this, or what had your production experience looked like before you joined the Summer Crew?
Yeah, so my production experience was very, very minimal. I had experience being live on camera before. Over COVID, I picked up streaming on Twitch as a hobby to fill the time. So I was pretty comfortable being in front of a camera, being live, but it is an infinitely different landscape when you are streaming from home in your controlled environment, in your little box in front of your camera, and it's just you and your thoughts, as opposed to having a guest with you who you're trying to moderate a conversation and trying to speak with them and make compelling and interesting conversation and content for people to watch. In addition, we also did quite a bit of filming outdoors and in environments that we couldn't control everything that was around us. So I think while having the experience was really nice, it also was just a completely different landscape than the type of filming and live streaming that we were doing for STORYHIVE.
Yeah, that's excellent points. Moving from, it's like going from inside the studio to outside to, not controlled environments, no matter what your shot list looks like or your interview questions, you never know where it's going to go. Mm-hmm. And Keel, what about for you? What did you anticipate? And what was your production experience like, both in live and not live?
My production experience was pretty minimal. I'm just a big fan of film. My background is visual arts, so a lot of illustration work and stuff like that. So like visually, I think I was able to kind of translate like what a shot should maybe look like, but otherwise very minimal and not very technologically savvy either, which is kind of funny because I ended up kind of taking that role of making sure like the video and audio and everything was doing what it needed to do. And then during each stream, I would kind of, babysit all of the equipment and the stream and everything and keep checking in and make sure everything was running properly. Because you want to catch it in a moment if you can. Otherwise, you might have kind of unusable footage. But yeah, and then also I guess part of my role was also to try and set up like where the shot was going to be, and like make sure that it's going to work, and there isn't a big Coca-Cola logo in the background or something. Yeah, and then Kimiko handled more of the on-screen talent.
So you applied jointly for a project called Keys to the City. And so Kimiko, what tell us about the project, and want to hear from both of you on, why you decided to apply jointly.
Sure. So Keys to the City was what we decided to call our summer crew program over the course of last summer. And for us, it was Keys to the City because I'm Kimiko and they're Keel, so Keys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's where the name came from. And for us, our goal with the series was really to speak to people who wouldn't ordinarily be represented in mainstream news media in Edmonton. So we really put a focus on speaking to queer folks, to people of color, just marginalized groups in general, making sure we had like women represented. We just wanted to talk to people who we thought might not ordinarily get that opportunity. And also on top of that, we just wanted to talk to people who we thought were cool, who would have really good stories to tell and to share. And especially we were coming out of COVID. So every person that we spoke to was just a really interesting and neat opportunity for us to hear about how they had weathered through the pandemic, how their business had weathered through the pandemic, and the way that their communities had supported them. And we really wanted to showcase, it's kind of been a thread throughout everyone here speaking, is how important community is. It really is what bolsters us. It's what feeds us. It's what gets us through the most difficult times. And so that was another big focus for us, was just showcasing the community and building community within that program. So that's kind of what we did, or we're aiming to do with Keys to the City. We decided to apply together for a few reasons. First, we were partners, so we were dating at the time, and we said, hey, this is a cool thing for us to do this summer. We're going to get outside. We're going to have the opportunity to create content, and our strengths really paired quite well. So as Keel had mentioned, I was the on-camera person. I really enjoy being on camera. I really enjoy getting to speak to people. I'm not going to lie, I was part of the Voices program this past round as well. I struggle quite a bit more with setting up the shot, with all of the behind the camera stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot to learn. Mm-hmm. Editing is a whole art form, making sure that a picture is well framed and all of that good stuff. It's an art form. And luckily, Keel had those skill sets that I didn't have. And they just had a better eye for what would look good and what would make a compelling shot visually, where I was able to take more of the reins on what would make a more compelling story. So we decided to apply together because it just made sense.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. And so Keel, from your perspective, what do you think creators should be looking for when you're looking to create a successful partnership to deliver and create content together? What would your advice to teams be as they start thinking about how to bring a team together?
I mean, I feel like, honestly, I feel like we kind of set up our partnership a little different than most other teams did. I think since Kimiko is so good in front of the camera and just connects with people very, very quickly and like intimately in the interviews, it just made sense to have Kimiko in front of the camera. And I just handled the rest anything that I could. But I feel like just knowing how the other teams operated, we did it a little differently, where they would have both people in front of the camera and they both learn, the whole aspect of it. So honestly, I don't know that there's really like a right way to do it. Just do what works for you. I think the biggest thing to know, like, as far as if you're going to be a successful team or not, is just like, what's your goal? And like our goal was like to talk to people who don't get a lot of coverage. Like, that was kind of, we wanted a very diverse cast of folk in our show. So yeah, like, we never disagreed about who we should be talking to. We were kind of like the same mind as far as that goes. And then, yeah, if, like, you know, one of you happens to be really good in front of camera, I say use your strengths, but also I was in front of camera a couple of times and it was a good experience as well. It was definitely very hard.
Mhm.
And actually it's funny too, because Kimiko mentioned voices. I also did voices. And I had to be in front of camera, and that was the hardest part for me. So we did eventually have to learn a bit more about each other's roles in future projects. But yeah, play to your strengths. But also, like, if it's something that you wanna learn and you wanna demystify, this is the opportunity to do it. Because honestly, like, there's a lot of nitty-gritty that I wouldn't have thought about before doing this program, a lot of it being like legal releases and all of that kind of thing. And the first time we heard about that, we were both, I mean, I was at least very overwhelmed and very intimidated. But then by the end of it, we were like, okay, like, this is just the process. We know how to do this. And then when it came to future projects, like, it made it so much easier because it had been demystified. It was actually accessible now. And it wasn't like we were just like running around trying to figure out what to do. So,
And is that where the tools and support through the StoryHive program and community really came in?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the training that we went through definitely helped, like, helped us learn, I guess, like, yeah, like the processes of things. And then also like, even just like learning the equipment and stuff, because sometimes when you're working on your own and you're trying to make something from scratch, you don't know where to start. But because of how the program's set up, not only do you get to, like, learn all of these things, but you have to implement them pretty quickly. And also, like, you know, if the first time you go out and shoot, it's not your best video, like, I mean, it probably shouldn't be, but like like, you're hoping to learn. And I think that also just helped, like, I guess we kind of like cut ourselves a bit of slack after doing our first couple videos, and we're like, okay, like, we got to be a little realistic about this. Like, we're learning. That's what this is about, is learning.
Being realistic can come in very handy in this world. In about a minute, I'm going to invite back all of the creators. But Kimiko, a question for you on what's the most memorable episode or experience you had in this project?
Gosh, I feel like that's like asking to pick a favorite child. Like, they were all so memorable for so many different reasons. I think one of my favorite episodes in total was we did a food truck week where we went to different food trucks around the city. We got to speak to their owners. We got to go in the kitchens. We got to film them doing, you know, cooking. And one of my deep, passionate secrets is that I would love to host a TV show about cooking. So it was like being able to get a little bit of that je ne sais quoi was great. And another bonus to this program is you get to pick who it is that you want to speak to. So we kind of knew that we wanted to speak to them. But my favorite interview that we had was with a local ice cream shop. They're called Yellowed. They are a very, very proud Filipino-owned company. Their entire ethos is bringing Filipino flavors to Edmonton. And they are, like I said, they're just unabashedly Filipino. They use Filipino names for the flavors that they're making. They refuse to use, for lack of a better word, white names for those foods because they believe that the community can learn the Filipino names and be educated about it. And getting to speak to them was just such a delight. I'm half Filipino myself, so being able to see people so proud of their heritage and wanting to introduce that to the Edmonton area, where we do have a very large Filipino population, but still a lot of people don't know a lot about Filipino culture, Filipino food. So that was really memorable for me to be able to provide some of that representation that I would have loved to see when I was a child watching the news. There was nobody who looked like me on TV. There was no one who looked like me getting to tell their stories either. So that is a particular interview that really, really spoke to me, and that we've kept up that connection since. Keel and I go see them very often. We support all of the things that they're doing. And they also believe so strongly and passionately about communities. So they really, really impacted me, and I loved having the chance to speak to them.
That's great. That sounds very tasty, and getting hungry here as we're getting close to the last bit of our chat here today. I'd like to invite back all of the creators. So we'll give everybody a minute to get back on camera. Here's our community, part of the StoryHive community, just a glimpse into the many different stories that we've heard, that I've heard over the last decade from so many people I come across who end up in the industry and applying for programs, whether they're at Creative BC or other funders and across the country. And that's really amazing to see. We're going to do a little bit of a wrap up with each of you. And really looking forward to, well, the next 10 years for StoryHive. And what does that look like in the ever-changing digital and storytelling world and the communities that we live in. And many of you through our conversations have talked about some of the lessons you've learned on your journey, but I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to just share, what impact or advice or, final words to future creators on this platform. Why don't we start with you, Shaylin?
Pressure.
No wrong answers here.
Honestly, in the next 10 years for StoryHive, I mean, I said it like at the beginning, like I'm so excited about all of the stories that are going to be told. There's someone out there who hasn't even considered calling themselves a storyteller yet, or there's someone who hasn't even considered picking up a camera yet. And, maybe they're watching today and deciding, is this the moment that I'm going to get started? And I think that it's going to be a lot of that over the next several years. And I'm so excited to see all of the stories that have been told and that are going to be told.
Excellent. Thank you. Michelle?
I would say the lessons that I've learned and any wisdom or advice that I could give would be to write daily, create daily, even if it's just for a moment, writing a few sentences, an idea, drawing it. The more you do something, the better you become at it. So consistency is the key. And keep meeting people, like-minded people, ask questions, reach out for support. Now that I know what I know, I love to share that. Each one teach one. I'm a big believer in that, and just keep making connections and building your team.
Thank you. Leslie?
I would say two things. The first one is you can do hard things. A lot of us spoke on it here. It's fun, it's exhilarating, but it is work. And especially when you don't know what you're doing, there's no roadmap. And then I'll also say part of the creative process is also resting and doing nothing. I had to learn that the hard way. So taking time and doing something that's completely not related to your creative process, just something that brings you joy. Really allow yourself to have pockets of joy that fill your cup, because you'll actually find inspiration, even though it's not even related to your project.
Yeah, for sure. Mitch?
Just do it. Create. Get in there, make art, make your project, have that voice. And don't think you're less of a creator because you ask for help. collaboration is where the magic happens. So
I like that. Allison.
I think my biggest piece of advice would be you are capable of so much more than you think you are. I think that was a big lesson for me. I was like, this is big, this is too big, I can't do this, but you can. And echoing what everyone said, lean on your community, both within StoryHive and outside of StoryHive. Find your people, create together, and have fun.
Yeah, don't forget to have fun. That is excellent wisdom. Keel.
Man, I'm just gonna echo what everyone said. Get help wherever you can get help. Everyone wants to see everyone succeed, whether that's within the program or outside. That just lean on everyone you can, because ultimately everyone just wants to see you succeed. So
yeah, very important. And Kamiko.
I would say, especially for other creators who are new to making content and to making and just creating, is that you're not going to be perfect right off the bat, and you have to give yourself some grace with that. You're going to get better as you go along. And honestly, if you look back at something that you made and you kind of cringe about it, then it means that you've gotten better. It means that you know what you want to improve, you know what you want to change. And I've shown people stuff that I've made that I think is trash panda garbage. I think it is just awful, waste of my time, should never see the light of day. And the people who I'm showing it to say, no, this is great. I don't know what your problem is. So remember to take a step back. Sometimes you get right up close in there and you can't see the bigger picture of what you've made. And usually what you've made is great. So embrace that.
And you never know how it's going to connect with people. You know, all of the stories that you're all telling, whether they're scripted or unscripted or animation, that it is, you know, there's somebody out there who it's touching that you would never have expected. We do have a few minutes here to open it up to audience questions. So we'll, if you have questions, and or if you're joining us on the YouTube live, you can use the chat box. And I'm going to check on this. I've got a question from YouTube. So how do you stay creative through the entire process amidst the hardships that are inevitable? Who would like to answer that question?
I think I can give it. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle, then Leslie.
I think I'll give it a whirl. This year has been a really tough time for my family. We've had many deaths in our family, and so that is difficult on its own. But as I'm not sure who said this, to make sure you take time to look after yourself and do things that are totally unrelated to filmmaking, those other things that bring you joy in your life and you know, brighten your light, and everything just kind of falls into place, because if you're passionate about it, it'll come back to you. And after you're re-energized, and yeah, just look after yourself and make sure you make time to do those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Leslie?
I was exactly what Michelle said. And I was going to share even my own example. While I was working on my documentary, I'm a medical mom, so we were still going through the surgeries. We're still living what I was sharing. And the greatest thing for me that I learned throughout that process is that when you enter this process of creativity, when you know your North Star, and by North Star, you know your why, there's someone else out there who will see your story and it will resonate. And if it impacts even just that one person, I feel like your story is a success, because they can see themselves in what you're going through. So for me, that was something that helped me chug along, because I was hoping even for that one mom, that one parent who was also going through something medical with their child, that they would see themselves in our story and know that they're not alone, because really we're wired for connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Leslie. I think we have time for another question here. The question is, what was your proudest moment? So who would like to, I'm sure there's many, but is there one that comes to mind for anyone that you'd like to share? Allison?
I think my proudest moment was seeing the first final cut of my project. You put in the blood, the sweat, the tears, the anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, the hard work, the fun. Of course, you put it all in, but I think there's always a fear of like, what's it going to be at the end? And so getting to see, the final cut of my first episode was just such validation for my project, for my North Star, for this vision, for the gift that I wanted to give. And I think that feeling is going to be hard to beat because it was so incredible.
I'm sure you will have it again. Anybody else want to share? Mitch?
I got one that's a little bit more personal, but my niece, I went into her room the other day, and on one side of her wall, she's got all the newspaper clippings, the magazine clippings, the costume, some props, all from our series of the Film Labs, which is just so heartwarming as an uncle, and just to see the impact that it's made. And so we're just hoping that can resonate elsewhere. But that was probably the proudest moment I had with Film Labs.
Yeah, that's very sweet. Thank you for sharing that. So I think that's it. So that's all the time we have. But thank you so much to Kamiko, Keel, Allison, Kaylin, Michelle, Leslie, Mitch, to our ASL interpreters, Liz and Larissa. Thank you so much. You're all inspiring. This was the in those days before it was even called StoryHive, and to my colleagues who were there at the beginning and those who continue to grow the Hive. Congratulations to all of you behind the scenes. Clearly, you're making an impact. It's changing lives and opportunities for people, and there's a lot to be proud of. And thank you to everybody who's watching and spending time with us. You can continue celebrating StoryHive's 10-year anniversary and learn more through storyhive.com/anniversary or /anniversary. And in addition to today's events, you can join StoryHive tomorrow, Wednesday, June 28th. At the StoryHive and TELUS Originals virtual program showcase and networking open house. So the event, and you can get connected with the TELUS local team, many other people in the StoryHive community. You can register for the open house. There's an Eventbrite link, I think, being shared. And please also share your feedback from today's session. If we have linked a post-event survey. So if you do the survey, you'll be entered for a chance to win a $100 MasterCard. So that's not so shabby. So thank you again. Thank you all. Keep creating, keep telling your stories, keep supporting each other. And congratulations again to the StoryHive team for 10 years. I'm looking forward to the next 10 and see what everybody does. Thanks, everyone.